Chris.
Heath.
I'm licking my chops.
What's on the menu?
Well, you see how good we're going to have it next year?
2025 just got a lot more populated with hot game releases.
2025 is going to fill the void that Frostpunk 2 left me with.
Best strategy game of the year.
Despite its amazing accolades.
Yeah, you proved me wrong on that one.
I don't understand it.
Samantha, welcome. I'm glad you're joining us.
Thanks for having me again, guys.
It's always a pleasure. You're a regular now.
I guess so.
You're an old hat at this job.
It certainly feels like it.
Because every hour of podcasting feels like 12 hours of real life.
Exactly.
Spending it with Heath and myself, I understand. But listeners, they're spending time with us too on this episode of Mobius Tubes.
Episode 113.
Being recorded on December 14th, 2024. We're hot off the presses. We just witnessed this year's Game Awards, hosted by Jeff Keighley, of course. We'll be talking about that in the back half of this episode. Heath, what's new with you?
I want to say a Merry Christmas to Janice, who sent me... Do you know what he sent me?
Christmas card?
Better. A Steam code for Rise of the Golden Idol.
No way.
I got it. Yeah.
Wow, I got comparative shit this year from Janice.
Yeah, you did.
Them's Fighting Herds. I got a furry fighting game.
I would dabble with a little bit of Them's Fighting Herds. I love their opening theme music, but I don't even deserve this generosity from him because I snubbed last year's Christmas present.
Do you anticipate booting it up before the end of the year?
Ooh, well, I'm going to have to if I want to approach double-digit games played in this year.
For our next episode, it'll be our top 10 list.
It's going to be gross.
I know there will be multiple lists this year that'll be gross for different reasons.
My list, I've been losing sleep over what to cut from my top 10 because as of right now, I've played 26 games this year and they've all been Heath and Chris recommends. So
Ooh.
Pretty horrible.
Samantha,
also, Janice sent me a game too. He sent me Arco, which is like an indie RPG. I think it's like Mesoamerican themed. It looks really cool. It got a brief shout out at the Game Awards.
It did.
I'm excited to play it.
Yeah, who needs Santa Claus when you're friends with Janice, am I right?
Yeah, thanks, Janice.
Which is so ironic given his occupation.
I mean, it's a match made in heaven.
He is a male porn star. Anyway.
Male is in his...
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
How many PCs are in this apartment?
Only one. I moved it to the front row.
Okay.
Over there.
How many swivel chairs are in this apartment?
2, but one is unassembled. Yeah, I got a new office chair. It's sitting in a box, blocking the main entrance to my apartment.
But you never, you're so undeserving because you never sit down long enough. You're always like getting up and you're like, ooh, I squat during the loading screens.
I do like to stand up. Got to move those legs.
Chris, here I am. My Skyrim character model is slowly rotating during this loading screen.
Don't want blood clots. Am I right?
I'm on the contrary.
They're in this time of year.
I'm trying to get bricked up with my clots. So Merry Christmas to Janice. My brother Seth asked me, what's the go-to board game for 2 players? Mm-hmm. And you know my answer.
Patchwork.
I told him Patchwork. But if I didn't say Patchwork, but also maybe should I said, this is a little bit of Cardboard Corner.
Yeah, we're bringing it back.
I just start crawling into a box.
You want a general 2-player recommendation, or do we have Seth?
If Seth
mind?
if we did a brother swap, I wish. What? No, that's rude. If Thomas lifted you up by the scruff of your neck and said 2-player game, what would you say?
Without knowing too much about the audience,
there's only a handful of 2-player games.
There's
Splendor, maybe.
Right. So Splendor would support 2 players. Well, I would say. With where I am in my board gaming right now, I might say the card game Battle Line. But it's a Reiner Knizia. It is...
How many bags?
0 bags in this deck of cards only game. You are taking a page out of Balatro. You're kind of making simultaneous poker hands, trying to win more fronts on a battlefield. That makes it sound a little more elaborate than it actually is.
This just sounds like war.
Yeah, it is a gamer's version of the classic card game War. That's how I would describe Battleline.
Can you even call war a game?
Right. There's not many decisions in war.
War is a game if Candyland's a game.
Right.
There's skill in Candyland.
I don't think so. It's predetermined, right?
Really? Is it really?
Yeah.
I never considered
The shuffle of the deck determines who's won, and you just find out.
Oh my God, what a tremendous waste. I need to stop any of my aunts that are buying Candyland for my army of nieces and nephews. Okay, well, hey, reset the clock. We almost made 7 minutes without mentioning Balatro, so let's dive in.
All right. So before we get to addressing all the Game Awards snubs and announcements in the back half, we've got games we've been playing.
Oh, yeah.
Heath, have you been playing anything worth mentioning? Was that you booting up Balatro recently?
Of course it was. I'm itching to get to some gold stakes.
The checkered deck is probably the easiest to do gold stake on.
Oh, because you're just flush with flushes.
You basically just always have a flush. Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, it's great.
Meanwhile, I'm holding down that R as soon as the initial blind is something like, get $5 because you haven't discarded anything. Is that cheating? Hey, Chris, I only play this Slay the Spire if the whale gives me mad bonuses, Elman. How many resets do you do on your roguelites if you can't cheese the RNG?
Oh, I'm not against the reset, but I usually wait it out a couple antes at least to see how I'm feeling before I hard quit and restart.
Hey, do you want to know a fun fact about Inscription, Casey's mod? If you try to reset to re-roll like what cards you can pick from in the beginning, the game will punish you and assign you kind of a bad card to be in your deck, and you only get to pick one special card now.
Oh, excellent. I hope it's like a 1/1 single heart.
It's a possum, yeah. So it has 1 damage, 1 heart, and it costs 2 bones.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a card that sucks?
it's not great.
I built my whole deck around possums.
What?
I'm running big possum. He's my main.
Well, then you should reset to your heart's content.
Oh my God.
All right, I'm going to clamp down on the card game talk.
Sorry.
Moving on. It's been a while since we've recorded. Samantha and I have been slamming games. 'Tis the season. So let's just get this out of the way. I'm done with Metaphor ReFantazio. Very awarded game at the Game Awards.
Critical darling.
Critical darling. Not a huge surprise. My final playtime, I clocked in at around 105 hours. Ran long compared to most people, I think. But I had a very thorough playthrough. I maxed my social rank with all my followers. I did every side quest. I cooked every dish I could in the kitchen on the Gauntlet Runner. I did it all. There was no stone unturned. And before this conversation takes a negative twist, I strongly recommend Metaphor ReFantazio if you even have a passing interest in JRPGs. It cuts out so many of the possible friction points I've encountered in other games of this genre, where it differed from Persona, even my beloved Persona. There are aspects of those games I dread. When I'm about to start a new palace and I know I've got like 10 hours of nothing but combat grinding in front of me, it feels like a chore. At no point in Metaphor was I dreading the next part of the game. It just had such a great forward sense of momentum. I so much more thoroughly enjoyed the combat mechanics of this game. There was no weak link, so it just carried me through to the end. It was 105 hours well spent. Such a strong recommendation. It's so player friendly, introducing just small little tweaks. Like if you do have one of your characters in your party who is lagging behind on levels, you need to like power level them, get them up to speed. You can just siphon all the experience from the rest of your party and channel it into one member. What a nice quality of life feature so that no one falls out of parity with each other. Just little things most games would have forgotten about to include an option for that Metaphor makes so painless for you. So no, it was an awesome JRPG. I loved it. But I do have some criticisms that this is the final update I'm going to have about this game. Let's dig into them here. The story, it was a fun time. Some twists, some turns, as you would expect from a story that lasted me dozens and dozens of hours. I was, up until now, I've seen it all, I was giving it the benefit of the doubt for a while, just based on all the praise I was seeing heaped upon this game. Not only was it nominated for Best Narrative at the Game Awards, it walked away with the award. It won. I'd seen lots of think pieces being written. I saw article published in the Washington Post naming it this year's smartest game. Lots of praise for this game's story and themes. And that's where I think I left a little bit disappointed once the credits were rolling. As far as just the actual plot and the sequence of events that unfolded, nothing too big for me to pick apart here. My only disappointment with the actual narrative that unfolded was the ending plays it a bit safe and by the numbers. Many players will probably predict where it's going. Some late game reveals I don't think quite were given the time they needed to breathe. Big revelations are dropped and then quickly moved on from in a kind of a...
Yakuzian?
Yeah.
What happens on the top of the skyscraper stays on the top of the skyscraper?
Yeah. That's my only nitpicks with the plot. My real issue with this game is the kind of deeper themes and messages it was trying to convey. They left me feeling somewhat cold. Let me dig into this a little bit. I have copious notes. The pattern I've noticed, because I played 2 big Atlas RPGs this year.
Persona 5 Royal and
now
Metaphor 5 Royal.
And the pattern I'm starting to pick up on here is that Atlas's writing team, I commend them. They take big swings. They're tackling really interesting and important topics.
Plus, you can hit the batting cages.
Plus, you can hit the batting cages in Persona.
I was trash.
I never touched those.
Good on ya.
I was so drawn into that 3rd semester of Persona 5 Royal. I was thinking about that for weeks after finishing it. I commend their ambition over the topics they tackle. The actual execution of the stories they tell, I think they become messy and muddled and a bit confused. And Metaphor was guilty of this crime as well. Examples. So I'd say one of the secondary themes that's a constant undercurrent as you're playing Metaphor is the game's criticism of racism and prejudice that exist in this fantasy land between the different tribes and all of their tribal conflicts. And I think there's this well-intentioned message there about, not judging books by their cover, trying to find the commonalities that exist between different groups of people. And yet, when you start to examine the writing under a very critical lens, it almost works against itself. Here's my big example. No spoilers here. I'm speaking purely in generalities. One of the tribes you'll meet over your Metaphor playthrough in this fantasy world, they're called the Nydia tribe. They're known for their iridescent, sparkling eyes, and many of them take on jobs like performers or like traveling people of interest. The harsh reputation they have is you were told they're unfairly labeled as liars and two-faced. You can never really take what they say as at face value. You think they're trying to get one over on you.
Gypsies.
Yeah, they're gypsies as a more real-world analogy. But then, as Metaphor introduces more and more Nydia characters to you, some join your party, they become your follower, you notice a concerning trend where one of the Nydia followers you spend a lot of time with, he's a prominent side character, his profession is a con man, trying to hustle money out of people and stuff like that. One of the political candidates running for the throne is a Nydia whose name is Jin the Charlatan, and he's running on false campaign promises that he has no intention of fulfilling. Every Nydia they bother to develop as a character is a liar, or at the very least is like a performer, so that they don't present their real self. They're always hiding behind a mask. In fact, later in the game, lore implications are introduced, explaining that actually it's not just the Nydia you've met. Literally every member of this tribe has something to hide due to lore reasons. None of them are giving you their authentic self. And at this point, I'm like, my God, Metaphor, you're developing this race as a monolith. You haven't shown me a single one of these people being honest. Are you telling me the racism and prejudice they face is actually justified because it's based in reality? I haven't seen an example of these guys who's worth trusting. I just think the writing is baffling. It totally cuts down the message they were trying to convey.
That's a good critique, but that's a pretty common critique when fantasy stories take on racism. Is a lot of the time you're like, yeah, racism in our world is bad because all humans are born the same. Race doesn't matter. In the fantasy world, where some of them are orcs, it does kind of matter. They're different species.
Well,
It's interesting, specifically in Metaphor, that they're pretty much just humanoid except for the sparkly eyes.
the whole issue with racism is you treat the individual based on your presuppositions about the group they belong to.
Right.
But if you portray the entire group as a monolith of liars, you've completely undercut your entire point. The writing is just so inadequate. But that wasn't even my main criticism. That was a side tangent where I think the writing goes in a wrong direction.
They pull a David Cage. You know David Cage?
No.
Ooh, yeah.
Want a quick tutorial?
No. I'm not going to derail you.
All right. Moving on to more, the racial prejudice stuff, I think was like a secondary theme of Metaphor. Front and center, however, the game touches on a lot of meaty, important, and topical subjects, especially affecting us right now in the current age. Subjects such as tackling the fragility of democracy in the face of something like a widespread misinformation campaign, or what role rulers should play when it comes to shouldering the anxieties of their people. How bringing about a lasting utopia is likely impossible and would be at best just a fleeting accomplishment. And finally, the role of fantasy in shaping our beliefs and informing what we think is possible. All sorts of topics I found very interesting. I wanted to sink my teeth into. I wanted the game to fully explore them. I wanted to see how they addressed these like nuanced issues. But I couldn't help but feel that Metaphor often presents only very surface level solutions to these quite complex issues. It seemed to me that a lot of the game's advice could be boiled down to generic platitudes you've certainly heard before. Namely, Metaphor's big takeaway is never to compromise on your ideals. Don't stoop to accepting more realistic solutions if you think doing so will betray your moral fabric. That's like the big thrust Metaphor wants you to take away with you. Side by side with it, another recurring piece of advice that's a little more specific is a warning not to fall prey to the siren call of political radicalization and fanaticism. Instead, one should seek to solve problems through more gradual, incremental change instead of sweeping overhauls and revolution. I think those are perfectly reasonable, uncontroversial messages most people, I think, would get on board with. They seem fine. But if you, like me, already think that, holding onto your ideals is important and that radicalization is probably best avoided, Metaphor had very little else to say to me. I desperately wanted the game to dive deeper into these issues and say more about how to deal with them instead of just giving me somewhat generic advice of just like, believe in your ideals and don't compromise. Your protagonist, when he's trying to, secure the throne, he's running on this platform that under his rule, everyone would be equal. Your tribe would no longer matter. Great stuff. Hard to disagree with that. But when it comes to actually creating an equal society, that's always an issue that will come later for your protagonist to deal with. There's more pressing concerns, like actually getting elected. The game never bothers to describe what actual policies the protagonist plans to enact to bring about these sweeping societal changes. As far as the details of how to accomplish that, Metaphor has no idea how to address them. Why? Probably because it's a difficult question to answer. Basically, not a ton of actionable advice. That's fine and all. Maybe the game is just like a feel-good thing to motivate you to maybe try to reflect a little bit more. I think I'm being particularly harsh about it because of the game's ending, where I think it has the gall to end on like a call to action. It tries to inspire the player to actually go out, change your life, apply the lessons you've learned here, turn your reality into the fantasy you envision. And I'm like, Metaphor, buddy, you didn't really tell me how to do any of that. You kind of just patted me on the back and said, go get him, Tiger. There's no actionable advice here. I've personally been impacted and I think hopefully improved by many works of fiction that I think were the most important to me. So in theory, I would be very supportive of the game's overarching message that fantasy can shape reality because it changes the people who consume fantasy. hopefully in a positive direction. However, in practice, I left the game feeling a bit lost when that final call to action was delivered, and I was left looking around my room being like, what do you want me to do, Metaphor? Run for political office?
Yeah, and you know who your vice president's going to be. Freaking Tony the Charlatan or whatever.
Yeah, Tony the Charlatan.
Or whoever that was.
So in conclusion, Metaphor had a lot of advice telling you what not to do. Don't fall into the political radicalization rabbit hole. Don't compromise everything you believe in just to get results. But when it comes to actually taking steps you should take, it was just radio silence as far as I was concerned.
So it's anti-Disco Elysium?
Where
Because Disco Elysium, that whole game is just a political compass game of Twister. But you're saying that it's as if Disco Elysium just was like all about like the police procedural. How this game, it's ultimately like, we gotta get more political intrigue for this candidate.
It was just such a basic message. If I could draw an analogy or a metaphor, if you will.
Reset that clock.
Let's say, in theory, I was a guy struggling in the world of dating and romance. Really, really multifaceted issue. So many different topics to address, from attracting potential partners, figuring out how to be an effective communicator, knowing how to test for compatibility. So many different angles you could attack that problem from. And I caught word from everyone's hyping up this one romance guru I should go seek some advice from. In this metaphor, that romance guru is the game Metaphor ReFantazio. I finally go sit down and talk to the romance guru. I ask him, okay, what's your life-altering advice? Metaphor would have told me, just be yourself, bro. That's all you need to do. On the face of it, it's reasonable advice, but it's like step 1 or step 0 of starting to date. Yeah, you should represent yourself authentically when you go out and date. Otherwise, you'll attract the wrong type of person. But there's so many other ways the dating experience could go wrong for you, even if you are just being yourself. It was just such a shallow solution in my mind to such a multi-layered issue.
I mean, I think you're absolutely correct. But as you've said, this is kind of Atlas's calling card. They love to just put a Band-Aid on the problem they've said and said, okay, everyone's happy, go home, believe in yourself. And that's kind of what they do, is they write interesting, complex problems, and then their solution is just Joker shoot real good.
For his B special, he wields a gun.
That seems to be the Atlas writing crutch, where the solutions they present are somewhat one-dimensional. Well, thanks for listening to me pop off on Metaphor. I had to get that off my chest. I felt like I was taking crazy pills when Metaphor went home with Best Narrative of the Year. I've only played 3 games from 2024 this year, and Metaphor is already not my strongest narrative of those 3 games.
Yeah.
The amount of praise it's receiving seems overblown. I hate to throw cold water on it, since I think it's a great game. Expect to see it still on my top 10 list. It's just, had it landed, all the themes and messages had resonated with me, it could have been number 1.
It's kind of interesting to me that you're so critical of the ending. Maybe it's just because it's gotten more praise. But Persona 5 Royal, the ending was super weird. Same critiques you could levy here. And you were so high on that game.
I think it's possibly a case of mismatched expectations.
Yeah, I feel like Metaphor is doing just as well as Persona did. It's just that people are hyping up Metaphor because it tackles more like relevant issues to the day. Like misinformation campaigns are a big hot topic.
And according to Metaphor, you need not worry about them so long as you stay true to your ideals.
That's so unbelievably not true. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yep. And that was my takeaway. I was like, ugh, all right, that's enough. I've spoken at this game at length. Let's move on.
Let's talk about Chris's best narrative of this year.
Yes, possibly.
Yeah, okay.
Take the reins, Samantha.
So I played 1,000 Times Resist because Chris asked me very nicely to.
I was groveling for
He
her.
was begging on his knees for it. So I did. I really liked it.
What is 1,000 Times Resist?
So 1,000 Times Resist is a heavily narrative-based indie game. You play as Watcher, going through a person's memories and experiencing them for yourself. And the later half of the game, I won't say what's going on because it's super different and it would be a big spoiler. I really liked the game. I felt like the first half of the game was the strongest part for me, probably just because it's more approachable coming from like a more realistic environment than in a kind of sci-fi environment where it's a little more abstract how to relate it back to like your own personal life and things you've seen. I think that 1,000 Times Resist has some really excellent writing in the fact that a lot of the times they will show you a character trait or an event happening instead of telling you that it happens. Like, watcher never looks at the screen and goes, Iris had a rocky relationship with her mom. Instead, you just kind of see how kind her dad is to her and how her mom is always kind of depicted in the other room yelling or criticizing Iris herself.
It's show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell. One specific example I thought of this, and Chris, you're free to cut this if it's too spoilery. See a scene where you can look behind your parents' bedroom door and they're arguing. The mom is like, you guys sleep in too much. Iris is always sleeping. She's such a lazy teenager and you're always asleep. And the dad is like, oh, she's a teenager. Like, let her live her life. And I work late at the noodle stand, so I'm always tired. And she's like, you guys should be awake more. And then it immediately cuts to a scene of nighttime where the mom sleepwalks and the daughter and the father are worried that she's going to sleepwalk like over the ledge of the apartment and like kill herself or like light the stove and kill all of them or something. And they never explicitly tell you that's why they're losing sleep. That's why they're always sleeping in so much. But the cut between the two scenes kind of illustrates the point that they're putting up with this criticism from the mother essentially to save her feelings because she's the one causing them to lose sleep. And I thought that was a great example of the good writing of this game.
I like how it's a high concept, heavily sci-fi plot, but all the sci-fi jargon and weirdness kind of fades into the background as it becomes just an intensely personal story about a handful of specific characters.
Yes, the characters in this story are very interesting. At the same time, how much they matter is kind of weird, and how some of them are just kind of done away with almost arbitrarily. But they definitely do a good job focusing in on certain characters and really giving them a lot of development. My critique is kind of near the end. They dive more into like what's happening in the sci-fi world, and they kind of lose a little bit of that character development. It's still there sometimes, but there are definitely like, I think this game has 10 or 12 chapters. And there's like a couple chapters where I felt like I was just kind of like doing a chore for someone in the sci-fi world. And yeah, plot was occurring. The environment was telling me kind of what had happened in the story. I don't think these are like bad chapters by any means. They just weren't my favorite. I definitely preferred the ones where I was like following a sort of narrative through memory. Yes, Heath.
Imagine she gets stopped playing Nier Automata because she's got to be the bot that carries the water. She's like, this game sucks.
Yeah, the Nier comparisons to 1,000 Times Resist aren't lost on me. I enjoy that the game, it's not afraid to like pull the rug out from underneath you and suddenly you're in a completely unfamiliar context and you've got no idea what's going on.
I did like that. I just wish I didn't have to go on a fetch quest immediately. I was kind of like, this is kind of not what I was playing this game for. I like the writing. I don't care to get you a flower.
And this game also has a lot to say about more current topical events.
Yes, and I will not say what events that those are because you should find out for yourself by playing this game. But yeah, it's very topical. I think it does a good job of kind of this game does a great job of conveying emotions. That's the best way I can put it. Is it really makes you empathize for the people who were involved in the current events that they discuss.
Tear-jerking moments?
Yes, I definitely cried the most during chapter 2, which is pretty early on, but it got me really good. Good stuff.
And as far as how the whole narrative comes together at the end, wrapping up, how did you feel about it sticking the landing?
I have one critique about it, but I thought it was pretty good. Essentially, it's what Chris said, where they give you one choice to make during this game. It's just what your ending is going to be. And essentially, there are like 10 on-off switches, and you get to pick which of those switches are on or off. My first ending I got was kind of a dud. And then I went back and I tweaked some stuff and I got a better one. I will discuss my complaint maybe in the spoiler section Chris would like to have. In terms of like decision making, it's no... I think what I would advise a player to do is get to the point where you see what decision you can make, kind of look at what all the on-off switches are, and then quit the game and go like take a walk for an hour and like spend some time marinating on it. Because I think that's actually more interesting than immediately seeing the results of your decision. I think that was probably one of my most enjoyable parts of the game was I got to the part where I made a decision and then I had to get ready and leave to like go drive somewhere. And the whole time I was just kind of like thinking about like, what is the game telling me to do here? What do I feel like is right to do here? And I thought that was a really enjoyable part of playing the game. And I wasn't even at my computer. So I would recommend it.
I actually agree with that 100%. Seeing the actual ending is almost immaterial compared to having the question posed to you and putting you in such a reflective headspace that you just linger on for a while.
Yeah, they do a good job of making it a really complex question. And the answer is kind of irrelevant.
Sam is pro Wiimote screen. Take a break.
Right.
Circa 2007.
God, I used to get so many of
Health
those.
advisory warnings.
Did I already call 1,000 times resist a Tacoma-like?
You may have,
All
yes.
Right. Okay, then scratch that.
Heath, is there any world in which you check this game out?
Nah, have you seen this game?
There's no guys in it.
All right, we're entering 1,000 times resist spoiler section. There will be timestamps where you can skip ahead.
So my
The current event she's referencing is the Israel-Palestine conflict.
No game would be brave enough to do that. My critique with the ending is there's basically only one ending, and there's two different flavors of it, but they're doing the same thing. So they present you with this really cool choice, and I made a different choice than Chris, and my choice was basically just a 1-second cutscene of, oops, you were wrong, silly, you shouldn't have done that, and I had to go back and fix it so I didn't immediately die, which is like, yeah, maybe that's a realistic ending, but I do wish they had kind of fleshed out more of the endings instead of just the one.
The interesting choice we've been glazing up is you're kind of tasked with choosing which elements of society to either keep or to get rid of to create your own idealized version of society going forward. So like you can remove the military police or keep them. There's all the characters you met along the way, some of them various shades of gray. There's a religious cult of fanatics. You can get rid of them or keep them. There's like members of the old guard.
This sounds awesome.
It is awesome.
Oh, hell.
Maybe we plug Heath's ears.
And depending on what permutation of these like 10 different light switches you turn on or off, you're presented with like the final cutscene that happens. Many of them, like Samantha just said, are these abrupt endings that you like last no longer than 20 seconds.
Maybe I'm naive, but I left the light on for the person who is really against the old authority. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to try and hunt them down. But the whole message of this game is that nobody's beyond forgiveness. And I was like, I can fix her. No, I can't, because she'll shoot me in the head if I try. So you have to kill her, I guess.
I stumbled into, just based on what I chose, got one of the more fleshed out real endings. So I came away feeling more positive on it.
If I may.
Yes.
It seems like 1,000 times resist ends with the most live or die LA Noire, press X to doubt. And if you can't parse whether or not somebody's lying, you get a bad ending.
Right. And I mean, there's a checkpoint, right? So if you get one of the bad endings, you can immediately reload and see the other options.
Thanks, developer.
I will say the AI character you're speaking to before you lock in your selections, he'll kind of preface to you what you're signing yourself up for.
Yeah, he does. He's like, are you sure you want to leave the person who said she was going to try and kill you alive? She might try and kill you. And I was like, I'm smarter than this game. She can be forgiven. Nope. Oops.
Freaking Mass Effect 3 child tugging at Commander Shepard's pant leg, just like, what the hell are the tentacle things called again? Reapers. If the Reapers are controlled, then combined the two.
So they do kind of warn you. I see why you might have thought he was pulling your leg.
Call me an idealist, but I thought I was
someone's
cool.
ready to play metaphor.
God damn it.
We both independently came to the conclusion of the best quote in the game.
Yes. So we'll say what the current event was, which is the Hong Kong protests in 2019.
Yes, the family you spend a lot of time with in this game were immigrants who fled the protests from Hong Kong, immigrated to Canada.
It's now about 2045. So it's been some time since that happened. It's two people who were young and were in the protests and like had police brutality done to them. And like then had since had a kid who's a teenager. So it's been a while. The mother and father who were in the protests are discussing like the mom is like, what we wasted our lives protesting. Like, why did it matter? Like, we didn't win. Essentially, the government just kind of steamrolled the public. And the father says it matters because when they write the history, they won't be able to say that people were fine with it. It will show that the people rebelled against this decision. And that's why it mattered. I'm butchering it a little bit. Chris, can you help me?
No, that was the gist of it.
Yeah.
The protest was crushed, but it did matter. Otherwise, the history books could confidently say it was always this way. It was the will of the people.
Right.
But no, the people resisted. And
damn near 1,000 times.
And it's definitely the most memorable quote of the game because you're like, the Hong Kong protests are the only real thing in this game. And it's kind of like sort of what the game is about in a way. What do you do in a society where your government is controlling the populace to the point where you can't fight back? And I thought it was really good.
Right. Touches on a lot of how does one go about protesting? And there's also lots of generational trauma. How does that get passed down?
A little internalized racism for those looking. That was in the forefront of chapter 1.
How is this not up for Games for Impact at the Game Awards?
Yeah, that was
have
crazy. 100% should have been nominated for Games for Impact. That was crazy that it wasn't.
All right.
All I have to say about 1,000 Times Resist.
Very cool. I am pleased. We shall transition out of spoiler mode. Heath's coming back alive.
What have you guys been talking about? Chris, I'm in the mood for something to escape from my zero bitches. Let's just press on.
All right, Heath has elegantly teed us up for the next game. We played together. Samantha and I, we went right back to the Zero Escape trilogy. We've been picking away at this. Earlier in the year, you might recall, we finished Virtue's Last Reward, the middle game. And now we've finished the journey. We've played and completed Zero Time Dilemma, the apparently somewhat controversial conclusion to this series. This is the series of puzzly escape room games with elaborate sci-fi plots, tackling everything from Schrodinger's cat and quantum physics to like time travel. It's a whole kitchen sink grab bag approach of weird concepts being introduced, and I love it.
Yeah, oh my God, Virtue's Last Reward was some of the most fun I had this year. It was so great. You have to be willing to like a little bit go with the flow because they do throw a lot of big sci-fi concepts at you. But if you can handle that, you're in for such a great time playing these games.
Right. You spend a lot of time consuming the plot, very visual novel style, and then occasionally doing the puzzly escape rooms. I will just, as a warning to anyone who thinks this sounds appealing as we tell you more about it, I think Zero Time Dilemma, this third game, is probably one of the least penetrable video game plots you could ever approach. You need to play the first two games.
Oh, yeah. If you go into this blind, you're just going to come out of it and be like, I have no idea what happened during that game.
It would be an absolute fever dream to jump into the third entry, no context. So please play the first two. You're just thinking of all the things that could go wrong if you don't know what's going on.
I won't say.
I'll say, playing this third game, some changes immediately did stand out to me. It's so funny. There's only 3 Zero Escape games, and every one of them, they cannot, for the life of them, stick with a consistent art style for more than one game. These 3 games look entirely different.
They should have stuck with the 999 art style because it looked good. Everything after that, not so good.
Oh, actually, Nidhogg.
Yeah, so the first game is very 2D pixelated character portraits. And then the following 2 entries are 3DS games when they originally came out. So now they had a little bit of a bigger budget, but they came out with like very crude 3D models instead of the more timeless 2D sprites.
I mean, to be fair, it was meant for the DS, and we're watching it on Chris's like big TV screen. I don't think we're doing it justice either, but it looks rough.
Wait, you need to have played the previous 2 games. This is the middle one.
This is the last one.
This is the last one. There's no world in which you should play this second. However, you're not wrong, Heath. In chronological order, this one happens in the middle.
Okay, so it's just in media res.
In media res. How did you even know that?
I film.
Okay. I also want to say in Zero Time Dilemma, they experiment a little bit more than just the static front-facing characters speaking to you. They're actually trying to play around with some different camera angles this time, panning shots of a room.
They show people doing like the physical thing they're doing.
To its detriment, because
Chris hated this.
what a shoestring budget this game must have had. The animations, if you can even call them that, are like character models statically panning across the screen. It's crazy. The occasional action scenes that happen are laugh out loud funny.
I loved watching someone chop someone's head with an axe. It was hilarious.
It's just like finger puppet, just bonk, right?
It's immersion shattering.
Also, their expressions, I feel like they budgeted like 3 expressions per character. And so some of the scenes are so funny because they're like devastated over something and they're just making like a vaguely displeased face. Oh, it kind of adds to it if you're there to like have a good time, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you go in accepting of the jank, it did not, as much as I'm being critical of it, it didn't really detract from my experience.
Yeah.
If anything, it was a fun seasoning. Another immediate change that's present when you play this third game is that events will play out in an even less chronological order than you're used to. So a hallmark of this series is that it's a very branching path. You'll make decisions that splinter out. You can literally see in the UI the entire decision tree as you go down different branches of it. To get the complete narrative of a Zero Escape game, you will hop around to different moments in time and see how different events would have played out had a different decision been made. Even the chopped up nature of the in media res storytelling is even dialed up to 11 in Zero Time Dilemma, because you're not even chronologically seeing a branching path to its conclusion. You are seeing random scene snippets in a completely arbitrary order. It's very 13 Sentinels in that way.
They even tell you what time it is at the beginning of each of these cutscenes. And even still, Chris and I were looking at the flow to be like, hey, where are we? Yeah, it was tricky.
And this wasn't just like a weird decision they made to mix things up. It's relevant to the plot. It all kind of makes sense by the end. I think I mentioned this. A twist was delivered through a UI element. And goddamn, those bastards, they did it again. Different twist this time, different UI element, but...
The writing does seem pretty tight for how crazy the story is. Like, they definitely didn't just write it in one go. You can tell they had the reveal planned from the beginning, and everything makes sense in the context of that reveal.
Seemingly innocuous decisions will have reasons behind them.
I think like really innocuous lines that people said, I mean, this is just like a hallmark of great mystery writing, I guess, is later you're like, oh my God, this is why they said that. That makes so much sense. At the time, I just ignored it. It's so good. I loved it. Chris and I, like after we finished the game, for like the whole next 24 hours, we were like pointing stuff out to each other that we had like just realized was actually like foreshadowing of one of the twists we saw.
It's very good. I will say usually my least favorite part of these games. I'm usually least engaged when we're trying to escape a room and solve the puzzles. I will say Zero Time Dilemma did have my favorite puzzle, which was reverse engineering an alien number system.
That was really good. I actually liked
like hieroglyphics.
I think I liked all of the puzzles in Zero Time Dilemma, and Chris is going to disagree with me because there was one puzzle level where you were basically just doing Tetris 8 times, and Chris can't play Tetris to save his life.
I'm so bad at it. I got skill checked.
Yeah.
It's 2 Tetrises worth.
So I did that one for us, but I liked all the puzzles. I thought they were better than VLR for sure.
Yeah, I think I did enjoy the puzzles a little bit more in this one. I dove into the fandom a little bit to kind of see what everyone had to say about this series now that I've seen it to its conclusion. common sentiment is that the third game, the one we just played, is like the weakest one.
Disagree.
And I have to say, I didn't really feel that. I still think the middle entry, Virtue's Last Reward, is the pinnacle, but Zero Time Dilemma is just a small step down, in my opinion.
My only critique for Zero Time Dilemma is in VLR, all the 9 characters were in the same room for a lot of the game.
Oh, right.
So we got to see a lot of character interactions. You got to know people a lot better. The game is also like twice as long hour count. So of course you're going to get to know people better. And I think that made it a stronger game because you're more invested in the characters. Now, Zero Time Dilemma has the benefit of only having so many new characters. Like they've brought a lot from the first 2 games. But they've sequestered people in groups of 3. So they're not interacting with everybody. You don't see Eric talking to Sigma because they're in separate groups of 3. And I think while, yes, the game's hour count is lower, so you're not going to get as much development for the characters, I think that also hurt it because you're not really seeing them interact with people who are really different from them because they're kind of just split off into these groups. That's my only criticism of this game.
I agree with that. To see more cast cross interactions would have been fun.
Yeah, to be fair, some of the characters we know pretty well already, but some of them keep changing each game. Not to call anyone out, but...
Yeah, one of the characters is like a different person every game.
Yeah, and we'll say nothing more on that to not spoil it.
In conclusion, for me, I think fully exploring the Zero Escape games this year has been my biggest pleasant surprise of 2024. I was not expecting to like them nearly as much as I did. Entering this year, I had only played 999, and I liked it. I did not know how much better the series got going forward.
Who do we have to thank for forcing the issue?
Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, this game was great.
I was sleeping on them.
My faith
Audio
in
listener, she's patting herself on the back.
my faith in Spike Chunsoft was rewarded. I love them. I want them to keep making games forever.
No, I was not expecting to become so endeared to the cast. And I will say, the experience was definitely enhanced waiting to play it in 2024, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so funny. His name is Sigma. One of the main characters, his name is Sigma. It's just, every time the girls come up to him and be like, Sigma, help. It's so good.
Okay. Okay. What are the girls like? What do they sound like?
That's a good joke they put in there for the future.
For the future in this time-traveling game.
Yeah.
They knew.
They knew. Chris, you have one more game to talk about.
I do have one more game.
Wait, so sorry. Just to prepare the audio listener, both of yours top 10 lists is going to be just a third Zero Escape?
I don't know. We'll have to see how it shakes out.
Do you Mass Effect Legendary Edition the series as just to cheat for your list? Like just
I've thought about it.
Just, here's the Zero Escape trilogy.
I separated the Mass Effects on my top 26 list, and so I feel like I have to separate the games. I'm already struggling about it. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, this has been causing her great duress.
It's Chris's fault.
You know what causes me great duress?
Rhythmic character action games.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I played one more game to talk about this episode. Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Heath is tuned out.
Well, ironically, though, because Too Mellow worked on the score of this game, which I love Too Mellow.
This is from Tango Gameworks, the recently shuttered and then resurrected game studio this year, of which I played one of their games. I played Ghostwire Tokyo and had a pretty good time with it. And so I came back to the well, wanted to see what Hi-Fi Rush was all about. I had heard promising things from
GOTY nominee
from last year, like it's a dark horse contender for 2023's GOTY. I would agree in the sense that it sure would be a dark horse contender because I don't think it would be deserving of GOTY. I had a roller coaster of a time with this game. It is the rhythmic character action game where you play as a dude named Chai who is taking on the robotics corporation called Vanderlei. They've got a nefarious scheme to mind control the masses into buying their products en masse. And he's going to put a stop to it. He showed up at their private island to get special arm implants. But through a surgery procedure gone wrong, he accidentally gets his MP3 player implanted in his heart, which means now all of Chai's actions happen on a beat. And it's a very musically focused, rhythmic game. In essence, on this podcast, I'm the character action game guy. Boy, do I like me some DMC5, some Bayonetta. This is a genre I've had a lot of fun with. And I heard Hi-Fi Rush was a somewhat accessible entry into this genre. You could get your start here because at their core, all character action games are rhythm games. They're all about inputting sequences of button commands in at the proper timing to pull off the flashy moves Dante or Bayonetta can do. And it's all about getting the proper dodge time windows. And it's a very reflex intensive game to become familiar with. And where Hi-Fi Rush makes it a little more approachable is it shows you the sheet music. It shows you the proper beats you should be playing on. There's a constant universal beat in the levels. In fact, all of the scenery of the trees and the shrubbery and the levels you're moving through, they're like swaying to the beat. All enemies act on the beat. You can enable certain accessibility features to see the rhythmic beat pulsing on like your AI assistant. And the game rewards you for making all of your attacks and dodges and jumps coincide with the beat. You'll do extra damage. You'll generate higher scores, par for the course kind of incentives to play on the beat. So it's kind of just making the implicit rhythmic nature of this entire genre and making it explicit. Here's the notes and here's when you should hit them. And it gives you lots of visual feedback to do so. It actually resulted in me having a harder time playing this game. I should just make it known this is probably just a me issue. I have a horrible sense of rhythm, no musical training at all, never played an instrument. The reason I think it actually made it harder for me, despite the fact that it's showing me exactly what I should be doing at the time I should be doing it, is in Devil May Cry, when you go to initiate a combo, you kind of choose when to start attacking, and then from there on out, the timing becomes important. When I initiate the first command in the combo, from then on out, it's game time. I need to make sure all of my timings are accurate. Where in Hi-Fi Rush, since there is a universal timing, the beat is always occurring, you can begin a combo at just the wrong time. And therefore, when you execute the full combo from there on out, you will always be off the beat. So basically, the fact that you cannot choose when to begin your attack, you have to listen to the game's universal truth it's telling you. Does that make sense? It's kind of an abstract concept. There are right and wrong times of when to attack, when in other games in this genre, that is not true. So that led to me feeling somewhat skill-checked by this game. The absolute Achilles heel for me will be certain enemy types, like a laser robot will come up to you, and right before it begins to attack, it'll hit you with like a Simon Says, I'm about to throw this pattern on you. Memorize it and repeat it back to me so you block at the right time. And I was dog shit at it. I could not, for the life of me, repeat the simple Simon Says pattern back to these enemies. They would just be killing me over and over again. I would complete the entire conventional fight section. It ends with one of these laser guys, and I'm like, I'm fucked.
Oh my God.
Luckily, there was an accessibility option.
I dove into the accessibility menus of this game.
Reduced frights.
There are things you can do to make the Simon Says sections easier, and I cranked them up as far as I could. Otherwise, I would have not seen this game through to its conclusion. This is just a me issue. I don't suspect this will be a widespread problem. And even someone as rhythmically inept as me did finish the game on normal, thanks to the accessibility options. So it's not impenetrable. As you can expect, this led to my early hours with the game being kind of frustrating, mostly with myself, somewhat with the game. I do actually think the first entire third of this game, it's not very long. It's like a 10 to 13 hour experience. I think I finished it in about 12 hours. For far too much of this game's runtime, it's throwing tutorials at you. There was a lot of start and stop. The fighting was pretty compelling to me. That was my favorite part, as you might expect from a character action game. I want the action. And yet, there was a lot of pacing issues in the entire first third of it that, pun intended, I was having a hard time finding a rhythm early on, since I was just being bounced in and out of the combat. Samantha actually watched me for a short section of this game. There was no action going on. I was just walking through corridors, doing some light platforming. And she told me, Chris, I think you were misled. This isn't a character action game. You're playing a platformer. I'm like, no, I'm not.
There was no character action.
There were just long sections of somewhat basic 3D platforming.
Cool environment.
Just a weird way to allocate the time you spend in this game. They introduced far more filler, not enough killer. The aesthetic is super charming. It's like a graphic novel come to life, very comic book aesthetic. The animation is pretty good, very musically inclined, as you might expect. I think lots of licensed music for this game. 9 Inch Nails is in there.
The dialogue, how's that?
Characters, while sometimes it's heartfelt, unfortunately, it's guilty of diving into the cringe area.
Well, the main character is a himbo.
Yeah.
No, he's not. He's nowhere near big enough.
He's a male bimbo.
I don't think I agree with him being a himbo.
Maybe
He's a little bit too generic.
Okay.
He's too skinny.
By the later half of this game, the action is more front and center. I improved a little bit. It was satisfying for me to get a little bit better. Just like you would expect from a character action game, at the conclusion of every fight, they give you a letter grade, and it gives you your statistical breakdown of what percentage of the time were you landing notes on the beat.
Oh, a la DDR.
Right. And when I first began, I was getting C and D ratings on my rhythm. I was getting the quote-unquote just timing correct hits.
Are you more early than late?
50% of the time, I was getting them on the beat. And by the end of the game, I had improved a little bit. I was more routinely getting around 65% of the time. So it was fun to improve a little bit. I felt like I gained some sort of proficiency over it.
What letter grade is 65%?
I believe I was touching B grade. But yeah, Hi-Fi Rush, it's funny. I don't know if I do recommend it as your baby's first character action game, even though that is kind of how it gets recommended.
Recommend if you have played an instrument.
If you have a good sense of rhythm, I think you'll have a great time with it.
Yeah.
It served as a barrier to entry for me.
I'm curious as a character action virgin if I should play this because I've played instruments.
I don't know. I think I would sooner point you towards Devil May Cry 5.
It does have that good soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there's a game full of himbos.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hi-Fi Rush, I didn't get along with it quite as well as I was hoping to. By the end, I was having a pleasant time.
Note to self, Heath, when Chris, next time he beats your ass in any game that's got trains or an auction, just imagine that you're in a 1v1 in rhythm heaven and just keep that in your back pocket.
Yeah, if you challenge me to Tetris or Guitar Hero, my goose is cooked.
Even Tetris?
If there was a Tetris rhythm game, Chris would score 0 points.
That's my worst nightmare.
There might be.
Let's make it.
Very good. That's everything we've been playing. Samantha and I have to issue a correction, however.
So we talked about Arcane Season 2 on the last podcast.
And then they go in Game of Thrones series finale yet?
We finished Arcane Season 2.
Yes, so we were halfway through it last time we talked as we were glazing it up.
I believe
singing its praises.
we had finished up to episode 4 last time.
Right.
To
And
be
now we have
specific.
seen all 9 episodes, and we have different opinions about it now. You'll notice when we talk about the Game Awards later, we described it as a shoo-in for Best Adaptation, which it did not win. And now we know why.
Basically, this show thrives on great character-driven writing. And then they just said, what if the characters didn't act like themselves anymore? And we just made them do whatever they wanted. And that's the rest of the show. Big disappointment, I
No,
think.
we're quite disappointed. This was a bummer. I don't know if it's Game of Thrones level. I don't think so. But
I still kind of liked the last episode, and episode 7 was pretty good, but they kind of lost the plot.
I mean, guys, the writing was on the wall. The main character's name was Jinx.
so
Oh, man.
I noticed a couple cracks last time where they were expanding the scope of the show dramatically. And by the end, those cracks became fissures.
just Mariana's trenches,
Yes.
San Andreas faults. I could continue.
I can be positive for a second. While the writing starts to show serious flaws, at least right up until the very end, the show continued to be an absolute visual spectacle. The animation quality never took a hit.
Also, the music was still really good. There were songs that they were introducing to me in the last couple episodes that I have added to my Spotify playlists. I like them.
But no, I had to do some deep diving into what went wrong. They just jammed far too much into season 2. This is somewhat conjecture, but apparently we already talked about how expensive this show is to animate. Every frame of the screen tells you why. It's beautiful. Riot Games, the makers of League of Legends, and apparently this show, they kind of view it as a loss-leading project. I don't think they profit on every season of Arcane that comes out. They view it as a way to funnel people into League of Legends, where they'll hopefully recoup their investment. So for them to extend it a 3rd season would be too costly of an endeavor, I think. They wanted it to be over with, quick and done. This is like 2.5 seasons of content into just the 2nd season.
Maybe 3 seasons.
Maybe 3 seasons.
Yeah.
It just escalates so quickly. I'll briefly be positive and say episode 7 was quite enjoyable only because the pace slows way down. It's a completely isolated standalone episode tackling a separate kind of event. And it was great.
We call them bottle episodes.
It was a bottle episode.
There are so many characters that just kind of change their motive on a dime. There are some characters where you're like, hey, why are you doing that? And it's like they don't really have a good answer. And it's kind of just seems like you needed that character to do that so you could have a battle or something. Yeah, it was Chris and I literally were like playing detective, trying to figure out like why things were happening, which is crazy
Right.
for this show.
In the penultimate episode, they established the stakes of the final climactic battle. The two sides have formed up. They're like drawing their battle plans. And I literally turned to Samantha and I asked her, hey, why are these two sides fighting each other?
And I was like,
They're from different lanes.
We eventually figured it out. But on the surface of it, we did not immediately know why the final battle was even occurring.
which like we paid attention. We don't go on our phones when we watch TV. We were watching it.
It had our undivided attention.
Yeah, blame the show for not communicating to us what was going on.
Yeah, the motivations of the characters were just so muddy and subject to the whims of change. It was wild.
Yeah, characters just flipped like crazy. There were some good moments in the finale I liked, but
My advice to listeners is to watch Arcane Season 1 and call it a day.
be like, wow, what perfection.
Perfection.
And then say, too bad they never made another season. And then go home. You'll love it.
Yeah, a real shame. Real shame. So I feel like I'm coming off so negative this episode.
It's okay. It's League of Legends. Sorry to League of Legends players who are also listeners.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
And that's everything video game related we've consumed lately. We'll take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be recapping the Game Awards. We'll see you then.
You know, I feel like you never let me talk about Castlevania on air because you know I would say negative things about it.
I'm waiting for you to finish it, so those negative things become more possible.
The pacing in Castlevania is just, they don't do it. They don't pace. They're like, we'll just
Save this.
save it.
And we're back.
We're back.
Check out the Christmas card I received in the mail today, Samantha.
Friendship, saving us a fortune in therapy. The Christmas card's from Janice. He said, thanks for being a good friend, Chris. You're pretty all right yourself, Samantha. Yeah, you said he got me. I feel like that's just him being cool. Thanks, Janice. You're pretty all right, too.
It's nice. It's very bespoke. And he hand delivered that himself all
Right.
the way.
Right.
In his Christmas attire.
Yeah.
So another year, another Game Awards in the books.
How much were you fist pumping? We should just wait. No, I'll leave it up to you. What order you want to tackle this?
Sure. I'll say Samantha and I watched it.
It was a good show. Better than last show.
I think it was one of the most watchable Game Awards I've seen.
Yeah.
The criticisms are still there, like Jeff Keighley rapid firing more than half of the awards, which is hilarious.
It's because Joseph Fares took up all the time.
Yeah, otherwise it would go way too long. It needs to be done, but this is your second Game Awards you've seen, Samantha. How was it?
I liked it better this year. There were more games. I was like, yeah, I'd play that. I liked being a little more invested in who won the awards, having played at least one of the games and watched you play a bit of them.
Mm-hmm. Biggest disappointment of the show for me was when it was revealed that Local Thunk had not arrived to accept his Balatro awards in person.
Oh, he didn't? Oh.
He sent substitutes, maintaining that wretched anonymity. I was hoping for the Local Thunk face reveal.
I actually support him not coming. I feel like he made this game by himself, right?
Right.
Yeah, he would become an absolute monster if he revealed his face to the public because he would just be like swarmed with too much.
All those Balatro fangirls.
Like me. Yeah, I think he's making a good choice there.
I just wanted to see the guy.
Yeah.
He seems cool.
Yeah.
Awards. What snubs were there? Astrobot Game of the Year, huh?
Yeah. It was the safest choice.
Yeah, I thought it was the most boring way it could have gone, unfortunately.
You thought Astrobot was the most boring?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It like gives me nothing to talk about.
Okay.
Astrobot won Game of the Year the way It Takes Two won Game of the Year.
In what way is that?
They did a good execution of what they were doing, and there were no killers.
You guys sound so glum about it. I enjoyed seeing something a little out of the usual genre norm win.
It was Odyssey 2, my guy.
I mean, yeah, it's a 3D platformer, but Odyssey didn't take home GOTY.
Right, because it was in the same year as that other game.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. That's what a GOTY is. It's a Breath of the Wild. It's a God of War. It's not gonna be GTA 6, but anyway.
You think I nailed it though? The JRPG split vote enabled Astrobot to rise to the win.
I have no evidence to the contrary, so yeah, Chris, you.
Yeah, I nailed it. Too bad that's not what I predicted though.
Some people are going to comment that Final Fantasy VII kind of went home.
Oh yeah,
took a bath.
It's got its music award, and that was it.
Honestly, I still feel like Stellar Blade kind of deserved that award.
What the hell is Stellar Blade?
I like the soundtrack so much. Sorry, I know I'm wrong, I guess.
Not that I have anything really against the game. I felt vindicated seeing Elden Ring DLC go home with no awards.
I agree.
Only for them to announce another Elden Ring DLC.
We're doing it again, guys. Second time's the charm.
Balatro went home with 3, almost the most awards anything got. Balatro got 3. Metaphor got 3.
Astrobot got 4.
And Astrobot got 4.
Yeah.
What an equitable year, where the most anything won was 4 awards. Pretty low compared to other years.
Chris's neighbors hated me whenever Balatro won an award because I was cheering. I was so excited.
I learned a thing about Balatro that I will not share with you because it is a perfect example of optimizing the fun out of a game.
Oh, you're saying it'll actively hinder our enjoyment if we knew.
There is hidden tech that would just ruin your enjoyment of any given playthrough if you're like, I could do this,
There's like a mod to where you can show how many points a hand would score?
Not even that, although
Okay.
you're right in bringing that up as another example.
Now you've got me so curious.
Tell us off air.
I don't think I should.
Yeah, his
Okay.
whole point
'Cause it's
was
such
he's unwilling to tell
It's
us.
such a fun game, and now that I know what it is, I have to resist the urge.
Okay.
I'm out of curiosity, how did you stumble across this information?
YouTube video number 955 for the day.
Okay.
I do a lot of driving, so it's
perfect time to watch YouTube.
Just autoplay. All right, are you gonna mention Witcher 4, The Witcher?
Sure,
The Witcher,
sure.
So Chris's reaction when he was like, oh, this is CD Projekt Red, and it popped up on the screen, he was out of control. By the end of the Witcher 4 trailer, he was kind of like, yeah, that was okay. And I was like, who am I sitting next to right now?
Because
Yeah.
he wanted a new IP.
He wanted it to tell you what was going to be in the game.
So, yeah. Let me get into this because going into the Game Awards, I typed up my little personal Chris bingo card of like what to expect.
Okay.
And the top tier was Witcher 4 trailer.
Oh.
That was a pie in the sky dream thing I wanted to see. And I saw it happening. I got over the moon excited. I was like, Samantha, this certainly looks like Witcher art aesthetic right now. By the end, I was feeling disappointed. No, I'm not one of the bad actors online who are like, They made Ciri uglier.
Yeah, no Geralt, no game.
Okay, first of all, Ciri is like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen ever. So whoever said that is stupid.
Yeah, she just looks, I don't know, 10 years older.
That scar is big.
If you saw that woman on the street, you would like rubberneck so fast you'd snap your neck.
All right.
Whatever.
I've never heard Rubberneck.
The first thing that gave me pause for concern was a false flag. At first I was like, oh, I mean, for this cinematic trailer, it certainly seems kind of lower budget. Is CD Projekt Red like kind of, are they not putting their immense resources into this?
Why? Because it's just a bunch of like villagers talking?
It turned out the stream we were watching was kind of...
It was YouTube's fault.
It was YouTube's fault. There was a lot of compression and artifacting going on. So we just found a better stream, and I was like, oh, this looks great. Never mind. But the reason I'm disappointed, despite seeing the trailer to like my favorite game ever getting a sequel, is I walked away knowing nothing else I didn't know going into it. Some might point to, hey, confirmation, Ciri will be the protagonist this time. But if you were a fan who's played Witcher 3 and its DLC, you knew that already.
Yeah, you even knew the big monster she fought. Oh, that's a Lamagorgon.
CD Projekt Red has already explicitly said Geralt is not the protagonist going forward. That was not news to me.
They're going to John Marston him.
The content of the trailer is Ciri fighting a monster. Believe it or not, I kind of expected that coming from Witcher game. That is not new information. It's even the tone of the trailer itself. Ciri practically verbatim copies Geralt's cool one-liner at the end of an old Witcher 3 trailer where it's the takeaway is man is the real monster. That's what she says.
Chris, are you complaining that they're giving you more of the same game that's your favorite game of all time?
They just copied their own homework and spit it out again.
Oh, no.
I was hoping for, like the first reveal of a new Witcher game, we get some information like maybe a relevant detail to what the plot's going to be like. We don't know the state of the world. What's the current balance of power between the Northern Kingdoms and Nilfgaard? What kind of characters we know and love will Ciri be interacting with? We just got generic villagers and Ciri's coming back. I learned absolutely nothing, and I was sad about it.
How many years out is Witcher 4?
Great question. That's the last thing tempering my excitement.
Enough time for me to finally beat Witcher 3.
I was thinking you're asking for a lot of details that maybe aren't set in stone yet if the game isn't coming out soon.
Another reason not to be excited. You might say, Chris, my guy, CD Projekt Red finally showed you a trailer. That means it's time to start getting excited. Except
Last time they did that
was for Cyberpunk
and we were in high school.
2077, where they revealed the trailer for that game, the cinematic trailer, in January of 2013, and the game released almost 8 years later. So this tells me nothing about the time frame of the release date.
Also,
this could be a 2029 game.
Cyberpunk released 8 years later, but it didn't come out.
And it wasn't even ready.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't come out until after that.
So I walked away knowing nothing I didn't already know. And for that reason, they gave me nothing to chew on. There's nothing about Witcher 4 I can now point to and say, oh, I'm excited about that.
I'm excited to have Girl Witcher.
But I already knew that.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
I'm excited.
I didn't know that.
So that's why what should have been my most exciting announcement of the show left me cold.
I'm going to beat Witcher 3 the day before Witcher 4 comes out. And then Chris and I are going to play it together. And then we're going to have one big episode spoiling the whole game. And then we'll end the podcast.
Yeah, I think that makes
Go
sense.
out with a bang.
Yeah.
Because we can't top it.
Can we talk about some more games they previewed?
Yeah.
That was the only game.
I know what you're excited to talk about, Samantha.
Well, there's a couple I'm excited to talk about. Would you want to talk about the big one?
Sure.
Split Fiction, coming from the guys who made It Takes Two Hazelight.
Right.
It's looking like It Takes Two, but girls.
Oh, yeah.
And their convoluted premise of like, oh, they're both writers and they get trapped in the same writing novel come to life simulation, except one of them writes a fantasy novel and the other one writes a sci-fi novel, and they have to like work through the levels to like escape their simulation. Premise doesn't matter. The gameplay looks awesome. I'm super excited to play it with you, Chris. I can't wait for it to come out.
It looked gorgeous.
Yeah.
I liked Joseph Ferris hyped us up, telling us this is some next level shit coming up.
When has he lied?
Yeah, he is constantly high energy, and he's like never quite rehabilitated.
Yeah.
Split Fiction will play as good and be as cringe as all the other Haze-like games.
Yes, I agree, and that's fine. I'll take the questionable writing of that team to enjoy that cool gameplay.
I think the premise of dividing the characters, one has a suite of sci-fi powers and one has a suite of fantasy, that's a fun way to give them an identity.
I already called dibs on the sci-fi character.
What I'm most excited about is to see, once again, how they divide the responsibilities between the players. And players will have very different asymmetric roles, doing totally different types of activities.
Yeah, and from what we saw, that's definitely what's happening in this game. It just looks like It Takes Two in a different font, which is perfect.
Sign me up, and I think it's out next year.
Yay.
There was a lot of things announced for next year specifically.
Oh, speaking of Joseph Ferris, that's his name?
Yeah,
I like
Joseph Ferris.
I like how many times he said fuck on stage and then later was like, look, my 2 daughters are here and they're like 6.
Right in the audience.
And I was like, oh, okay.
And I don't think anyone else in the entire production swore.
Such an underrated joke that he has 2 daughters.
Right? He made the games for them.
They were in development during Brothers' development.
He wanted boys.
Yeah. Rip.
Samantha, would you say the most surprised you were for the entire show was seeing Harrison Ford come out on stage?
Oh my God, I wouldn't shut up about it. I was like, he's so old. Why is he here? Do they have him in some sort of contract? Yeah, I couldn't believe he was there. That was crazy to me.
I mean, they Al Pacino'd the year before.
They did.
I was ready for it.
Yeah, the level of celebrities they're able to get at the Game Awards continues to impress.
What's not Nathan Drake's name? What's the voice actor boy? What's his name?
Troy Baker.
Troy Baker does a fantastic Harrison Ford.
He did, surprisingly, to such a great degree.
Hey, Chris, do you want to talk about your brief experience with the Indiana Jones game?
Indiana Jones and the Great Circle,
Big ol'
the
circle.
recent release, was briefly in our shared Steam library, but no longer. It's not a very interesting story. I stumbled across a website selling the game, and there was a brief error where it was $0, and I redeemed the Steam key, but unfortunately, it was revoked 2 days later.
Is there any deal.com?
Right.
Massive spike.
Sale.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, that's an immersive sim.
Oh.
Ain't it? I watched one donkey video of all he does is run into like the water fountain which the Nazis don't have movement pathing to enter. So they're and like there's very little gunplay in the Indiana Jones game. Everyone's throwing like bats and rocks and shovels. And so it's just Donkey just and he's just shucking them at Nazis. And there's at least a dozen of them. And it's just so many projectiles. You can do whatever.
To my surprise, that game reviewed excellently. I am interested.
It's got the right amount of jank.
The right amount of whips.
That too.
This is probably one of the bigger announcements. A new Naughty Dog game from a new IP.
Intergalactic.
The Heretic Prophet. I think it would have been a better title to just drop that subtitle.
Yeah, just forget it.
But no, the first time Naughty Dog's released a new IP since 2013 with The Last of Us, so it's been a hot minute.
Who made part 2?
I mean, that's not a new IP.
Because it's part 2.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
It looks really good.
Yeah, refreshing to see them because I'm used for Naughty Dog for the past 20 years almost has been doing like really grounded series with a swashbuckling adventure with Nathan Drake in Uncharted and then rugged survival in The Last of Us. So to see that do them something as fantastical as sci-fi is intriguing. You mentioned Elden Ring getting some more DLC, Heath.
Yes.
More of a spin-off game?
It's the same way that Skyrim had a spin-off.
Yeah. Ooh.
Where you can kind of fight every type of monster in this new
It's called Elden Ring
co-op
Night something?
boss fountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Night Haven. That's not right.
It's just new Elden.
New Elden. None of us have played Elden Ring yet, unfortunately.
Nightreign. Elden Ring Nightreign.
That's close.
So it's like multiplayer Elden Ring.
Yeah.
I heard a troubling rumor, which is that you can play it single player, you can play it with a party of 3, but apparently they will not let you play 2 players.
Well,
Killing.
we have a party of 3.
We have a party of 3 if we get Heath in on this.
There we go.
And then I just AFK. Is the reason for that because they didn't want it to be just 1v1s?
Well, I mean, it's cooperative.
You can't even do friendly fire?
I don't think it's friendly fire.
Okay.
This is just guessing.
Complete conjecture.
Yes. I also heard it's kind of a mixing and mashing, so it's almost a rogue light where it'll take environments and enemies you're not used to seeing together and mix them all up.
Just fine. Do it.
See how long you can survive. It sounds vaguely interesting. I assume it'll sell gangbusters with how big of a deal Elden Ring was.
Yeah.
Who's the weirdest Souls boss that From Software ever did was like Mikolash, the guy with the fun thing on his head that like runs through a maze. I'm talking to the wrong guy.
No, I played Bloodborne, so I do know that boss.
Oh, you do know that boss.
It was quite the departure.
Yeah, how would you're gonna put Mikolash in like an empty field? Like,
it was more of a race than a fight.
Yeah.
What? Never mind. I'll ask later.
Okay.
Wait, you don't have all the games on here that I want to talk about.
That's true. Make your own list.
What do you want to talk about?
Don't copy my homework.
What about the one where you're like packing a car?
It looked cute, but it looked hard to control, and I just don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, I'll stick to my Wilmots Weremouse. Thank you very much.
I liked the look of the game Dispatch. That, oh my God, Jesse is the voice actor.
Pinkman
Yes,
is his actor.
His real name is Aaron something.
Paul.
Aaron Paul, thank you. Aaron Paul is going to be a voice actor for it. That game looked really cool, right up my alley. I want to play it.
That did look promising.
Yes, it's a resource management where you're like playing as a dispatcher for superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
fun concept.
And there's like clearly like some overarching plot and like story going on where you can make dialogue choices.
Right.
That's what I love to see.
No, it seemed pretty original to me. I want to see more. That was a fun little highlight. I will say, I saw some projects announced that gave me hope. 2 new projects from Ryuga Gotoku Studio, RGG, makers of the Yakuza franchise and Like a Dragon. They announced 2 non-Yakuza titles, giving me as a snowball's chance in hell that maybe I can someday catch up if they're not cranking out Yakuza games. They announced a new Virtua Fighter.
Yeah.
I can snooze on that. Good. Waste their time making that. I don't need to play it.
Yeah.
They also announced something called Project Century, which did look appealing. It's like a set in 1915 era Japan. It doesn't seem to be tied to the Like a Dragon franchise, but
I'm sure it is. Chris, this is the only studio you would say, please waste more time.
Yes, I need to catch up.
Yeah.
But no, the fact that they announced 2 projects from that studio and they have like a Pirates in Hawaii coming out in a couple months, they are a workhorse of the industry. My God.
They're opposite of CD Projekt Red. Yeah.
You can't stop these guys from releasing games.
So I am the only one here maybe that's played Overcooked.
I have not played Overcooked.
Yeah, you guys are too gamer to play Overcooked. It's a fun game.
I put as much time into Overcooked as I have making a single risotto.
Okay.
On the contrary, Samantha, I haven't touched Overcooked because I'm not gamer enough.
Yeah.
That game seems stressful.
It is a game where you will fight with the people you're playing with.
Yeah.
But it's so fun. I played it with my siblings. It was great.
You don't talk to them anymore, but it was great.
That's not true. Whatever. That team came out with a new co-op game that is called, Chris, help me out, please.
I think it's called Stage Fright.
Stage Fright, yes. And it looks really cute. I like their games thus far, and I'm going to make Chris play it with me. And he's on air agreeing right now.
Yeah, I will do so. It looked fun.
Great.
I don't know what the gameplay will be like, but the visual style was drawing me in, at least.
Yeah, it looked cute. I think it's not going to be like anywhere Game of the Year contention, but I think it's a fun time. And I think it's probably more of one of the more approachable announcements that we were going to talk about today for like casual gamers.
Okay.
It's an escape room game?
We're good at those.
Yeah, we've been practicing.
We've been practicing.
Speaking about the least accessible a game could be, this one was so funny to me. You're not going to even remember it based on the title. A game was announced called Shadow Labyrinth. But the reason it's a Metroidvania game. The reason I'm bringing it up is that it looks like edgy Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like
it's made by Bandai Namco.
Right. It is explicit. Pac-Man is in the game, and he's like dark and has a hunger.
They're taking Carnage? No.
Yes.
Carry On's playbook.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
that-
Carnage.
maybe Carnage. No, Shadow Labyrinth looked what a funky idea. I can't believe it got greenlit.
It's like they're doing like a Far Cry Blood Dragon.
It's like a gag game to an extent. Yeah, I want to learn what Pac-Man's dark, tragic backstory is.
Waka waka waka.
Yeah, it definitely got us while we were watching it because we were like, oh, whatever. This looks so generic. And then we were like, is that who we think it is?
Is that a pizza? Awful title.
Yeah, it's so generic.
It's so bad. Yeah.
Well, it's like Labyrinth because that's where Pac-Man.
He is in a labyrinth.
Yeah. Come on, guys.
Heath, when you were watching along at the awards, what were the pop-off moments to you?
To be fair, I was at work during the awards, so I watched Intergalactic. That was like the last thing I caught.
It was the final announcement.
I didn't know Astrobot won until like 2 a.m.
Okay. I remembered something else to say.
Oh, thank God.
Were you happy
then
to see that Frostpunk won, or were you disappointed?
I mean, the only reason that Frostpunk won, Samantha, is because Civilization 7 doesn't come out until next year.
They did show the orchestral.
This is all the music that you're going to like.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to expose Chris because he skipped past that part when we were watching it.
Oh, it was a bathroom break or something?
He was like, don't tell Heath I did this. And I was like, I'm going to tell him.
You're outing me.
I told you I was going to tell him.
I mean, I will tout the successes of Baba Yetu Guy, the only Grammy award-winning video game music man. But I'd be lying if I could you could give me orchestra pieces from Civ 7 and orchestra pieces from anything else, and I wouldn't be able to tell you which is which. But no, I'm excited for Civ 7. It's basically the countdown timer to getting a PC
Your Atlas
again.
game calendar deadline has been set.
It's in the top right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Top left.
Yeah,
Top right.
Okay.
and I'm just
wait,
walking
maybe
through
right.
life, just yeah.
I remember what I was going to say. So at the Game Awards, Jeff teed this up as kind of a fake out final announcement where he was hyping up the audience through the roof. He was like, if you like video games, you're going to love this.
Kojima.
You won't believe your eyes. And then the camera pans to this guy on a massive drum, like samurai style.
I saw that.
Drumming it up. The stakes could not be higher. I'm looking at Samantha and I'm like, is Half-Life 3 about to happen? What could possibly warrant such praise here? And it was Okami too?
Oh. Which, for the audio listener that's never heard of that, Okami 1 is the wolf game that everybody liked the first half of.
Okay. I'm unfamiliar with the game's reputation, except that it's
a white
liked.
wolf with red markings, a la Kratos.
Right. It came from Clover, the studio, the defunct studio, helmed by Hideki Kamiya, the guy on Twitter who likes to ban people.
Yep.
And the big announcement is that he's been brought back into the fold. He's working on the sequel under a new studio called Clover's.
Fun.
So I guess that reunion of like the main talent who worked on the game coming back to work with Capcom, that is the touching moment for longtime fans. But it was lost on me.
Okami is some people's favorite game.
Right. I guess for the caliber of game it was strange to never receive any sequel.
Both commercial caliber and critical caliber.
Primarily the critical caliber. I think it was a little soft selling.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, you're right. But despite that fact, it had massive cachet.
Right.
With the people that we listen to.
IGN gave it Game of the Year that year, I think.
Sure.
So that was meaningful to someone out there, just not to me.
No.
And the last thing I thought of that I wanted to mention was the Game Awards orchestra, the big medley of songs they do right before they announce Game of the Year. So funny to see how they incorporated the Balatro song into that.
Yeah, what Chris told me at the front of like the beginning of the show, he's like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna happen." I was like, putting Balatro's soundtrack, generously calling it a soundtrack.
There's
in
one
there,
song.
The one song is gonna be so funny. There's so many ways it can go badly. I feel like it wasn't organic the way they did it. It was pretty funny.
This is news to me. I haven't heard this.
Oh,
yet.
you should go listen.
Live react right now.
It's pretty funny.
Live reaction.
I'll fill for time. I got Janice, who's getting name dropped very frequently this episode. He texted me out of the blue just to praise how they incorporated Balatro into the orchestra.
Oh, I thought it was silly.
He said arranging a song that's in 7/4 time signature into 4/4 and not fucking it up feels like actual sorcery. As someone who doesn't know anything about music, what he says sounds like sorcery.
So 7/4 means there's 7 beats per. I'm gonna fuck this up. 7 beats per measure. 4/4 there's 4 beats per measure. If you've heard a song, it's probably 4/4. Converting that is tricky. He's right.
Oh, they're doing like Casino Royale type cover. This is
just
much too epic for the context.
The level of production value lavished on this toilet sitting time waster.
It is James Bond villain level theme. That's
it's
unimaginable.
So funny.
You almost want like the full cover.
I can see why Local Thunk didn't show up. I can't imagine what he felt watching that and being like, what?
He's like, it's gone too far.
Yeah, I'm taking the game off
It
Steam.
hit critical mass.
Yeah.
If Anti-8's boss blind weren't so like trite, but if you have a decent enough build, you'd almost want that to kick in.
Oh my God.
The same way that like, the tarot card theme is like slightly different. You almost wish it faded into Game Awards epic tier. But by that point, Anti-8, you're just like, bring.
Why would you say that to me, Heath? Because now I'm like, damn, I do want that.
Yeah.
It'd be so cool. Oh, well.
Yeah, listening to that while you play, it would raise the stakes.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. End of episode.
End of episode.
Folks, if you want to write in and tell us all about you didn't get enough Zero Escape talk this episode and there needs to be a subsequent one where there's even more Zero Escape talk, you just write into MobiusTubesPodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. MobiusTubesPodcast@gmail.com. Get those inquiries in before we record our final episode of the year. It'll be the big one next episode, counting down our favorite games we played this year. Always a fun time. Samantha, closing thoughts?
I'll be doing next episode at gunpoint. See you then.
All right. And with that, take care.
Happy Star Wars Day, Star Wars fans. And it is my birthday. And it's my girlfriend who is amazing. What is she? You've seen that, right?
No.
Where it's like, let the girl go. You don't want to do this, Marcus. Like the TikTok. You surely have seen this.
Chris has never been on TikTok.
Right? So
oh, yeah, I have seen it.
So he forces his girlfriend to be a part of this. And then you know how you can duet other people's TikToks? Somebody just of their own volition holds a gun to her head as if he's holding it. And then it grows. And then if this is the right one, news broadcast of the hostage situation. And then ASL interpreter. So this is why the internet exists.
Thank you for that.
All right, wrap it up.
All right. Bye.
Bye.